Chapter 274 to 276. Kaya. Boom. Fresh. Pramp. Eat this. Crash. Boom. Cataboom. Kamehameha. Slash. Son of a bitch. Crack. Prump. After the exchange of words between Broly and Daishinkan, the battle between the two realities began, although in both sides almost everyone wanted Broly's to win. Kaya. Boom. Garlic cannon. Pramp. Die motherfucker. Crash. Boom. Cataboom. All fiction. Slash. No please, I'm only a Pacific Kaishin. Crack. Prump. In the ring, prepared for the tournament, the representatives of all the invited universes fought against Broly's henchmen. And although the natives of the 8 universes had the numerical advantage over Broly Legion, their increased power and extra power system wreaked havoc on their enemies. In a few seconds, the weakest fighters were taken from the fighting track to the stands, which had been sealed so that no one could advance and fight again. However, there wasn't a single member of Broly's army in the stands. All of them were fighting and defeating the fighters of the other universes until only the strongest remained. This is the best day of my life. There are so many strong guys with different abilities. Shouted Goku while fighting a weird smiling guy that always healed no matter how many times they hurt him. He seemed immortal like Zamasu. Ha. I am fighting against Goku. Said Kamagawa, which was also fulfilling one of the biggest dreams of his life. Shut up you idiots. I'm busy. Said Vegeta, whose was trying to kill Frieza right now. Goku's screams or hearing Shin ask for help while Majin Buu was chasing him distracted him. Kaya. Boom. Hakai. Pramp. Die motherfucker. Crash. Boom. Cataboom. All fiction. Slash. No please, I'm only a Pacific Kaishin. Crack. Prump. Meanwhile in the air the 8 Hakaishins fought against Midora, Madara, Hao, Acacia, Ihiko, Aizen, Kagaya and Dio, ones of the most powerful fighters in Broly's army. Those who won the lottery to fight against the strongest opponents in this tournament, although they were also among the few who entered the draw. And as happened below, the Hakaishins hadn't an easy time against the final bosses of their respective realities, which were improved over the years in the form reality of Broly for this moment. Fuck. Where the hell did Broly get these freaks from? Their attacks are extremely strange. Shouted Kampa, who was suffering more than the others due to his lamentable physical state. So, you are one of the gods of this reality. This is disappointing, said the god of Earth Hao as he launched a concentrated supernova in his face, who chose this adversary because he looks like a cat, although a fat and ugly one, not like his Mantamian. Shut up. We have problems too. Stay calm, Beerus. I just have to keep fighting and stay alive until all this shit over. And, please. Broly, you must win. If after this Zeno-sama doesn't destroy my Universe 7, he will never destroy it. So please, win and at least let me live, said and thought the cat god Beerus as he fought against the rabbit goddess Kagaya, as he once again pinned all his hopes on his greatest enemy to date. Meanwhile, at a higher level, Broly was entertained with the fight between the two realities in which everyone wanted Broly to be the winner, something that excited Broly a lot, just as he had planned. And while you feel like a Roman emperor enjoying the fights between gladiators. Clasp. 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 Claps. Clasp. Clasp. 8 people appeared in front of him, blocking the view of the Roman circus he had created. They were the angels of the universes invited to the tournament. Sour, Campari, Cognac, Mojito, Kusu, Margarita, Vados, and finally Whis, who detached himself from the group to approach Broly while all his brothers watched what was about to happen. Do you want another sparring, Whis? I think this is not the time for that, do you think? Broly said sarcastically as Whis advanced towards him with the most serious expression he had ever seen him perform. It was evident that he wasn't coming for more food as usual. You are right. This time won't be a sparring match, Broly, Whis responded, declaring his practically murderous intentions towards the best cook that surely ever find, something that hurt him deeply. And Broly, without feeling any kind of surprise, continued using his sarcasm. Seriously? I thought that you Tenshins couldn't and shouldn't fight, that you were just Hakaishin servants, teachers, spies, and advisors. Normally yes, but this situation is different, Whis replied while pointing his staff at Broly. That's right, the Tenshins were forbidden to fight except to train others and to some extent affect the order of the universe with their powers and knowledge. The problems related to the creation, management of the universes should be in the hands of the Kaioshin's, and eliminating threats that could affect the balance of the universe was the responsibility of the Hakashins. He couldn't interfere in the matter of mortals or perform the role of the two deities of the universe he supervised. However, this situation was radically different. The threat that had to be eliminated threatened all of reality, and no Hakashin was a match for him. I see. In some way you knew that this day would come, right? I listened to the conversations you had with Beerus, even the telepathic ones," said Broly, showing among other reasons why he had also planned or at least predicted this situation. And Whis, without being surprised or angry when confirming that they were spied on all the time, since he expected it to be so, replied, "I'd be lying to you if I said this never crossed my mind. But it seemed highly unlikely." "Well, test me, Sensei," said Broly while transforming from the beginning into true Legendary Super Saiyan full power beyond. In this way, the fight between Broly and Whis finally began. Boom! It began with a large shock wave created by the confrontation between the two attacks with which the experienced combatants were able to measure the strength of their adversary. "Good strength, especially considering how thin your arm is," said Broly, smiling like a lunatic warmonger. His Saiyan blood hadn't burned like now for years. But Whis didn't say any cool or witty phrases. He was too focused on the arm with which he punched Broly, an arm that was still numb even now. Such power, those huge muscles aren't just for decoration. However, there was no time to talk or think. Broly, partially influenced by his Saiyan berserker genetics, charged at Whis, who even now continued to use a defensive combat style. Whis, after the first attack, understood that it was impudent to block Broly's attacks and that it was dangerous to parry them. Therefore, he opted for his specialty, dodge the powerful punch at the perfect moment. Clash! Fiu! Whis not only avoided being hit by that powerful attack that even warped the space of that strange dimension. He positioned himself behind Broly, whom he attacked on the back of the neck with his hand to knock him out as he always did with Beerus. Fiu! However, that attack failed to hit Broly's neck. Whis' hand went through his body as Broly had teleported the part that was going to be hit to the formless realm. Nevertheless, Whis didn't have time to feel frustrated at missing his favorite attack, since Broly's tail changed his shape and enlarged to hit him in a blind spot. Fliu! Crash! Fortunately, Mr. Wish was able to block the attack in time by protecting himself with his staff, which was about to break after absorbing the full impact of that attack hat sent Whis flying. Fliu! HaHaHa! And without giving Whis time to stabilize, Broly charged once more against his effeminate sensei to hit him with another mighty punch. Clash! Fiu! Another punch dodged by Whis, thanks for his innate Migat no Goki, despite the situation he was in. Fliu! However, this situation was already predicted by Broly, who teleported the fist he failed connect at the point where Whis was dodging. Clash! Fiu! And once again Whis dodged this attack at the last moment. He had seen Broly fight on many occasions and knew how much he liked to perform this ability, so he was prepared in case something like this happened, to counterattack with a powerful kick when Broly believed he had won. Slash! However, Whis' attack passed through Broly's body without hitting anything except air, because once again Broly had teleported part of his body to another dimension so as not to be hit. Slash! Automatically Broly with his other rocky arm attacked Whis, who was in a very complicated position after his second consecutive dodge. Broly's fist was getting closer to Whis' face, who seemed unable to react in time to that brutal attack that could undoubtedly cause him almost fatal damage. Clank! Fluuu! However, something extraordinary happened. Whis' staff, as if it had a life of its own, flew from Whis' hands at full speed in the direction of Broly's fist with a large amount of ki on its end to impale Broly's arm. Broly was about to hit precisely with that part, so he couldn't teleport it to another dimension if he wanted to hit him. He would either continue with that attack taking considerable damage or teleport his arm, causing Whis to avoid that attack. Sha! Clack! UMH! However, Broly always had more options. Broly deformed his arm to create a hole at the precise point where Whis' staff was about to pierce, causing the staff to pass through him without teleporting his arm or taking damage, and also grabbing Whis' staff so that he couldn't use it. Fiu! Slah! Srips! Nevertheless, Wise was able to dodge that attack as well, although not completely, as his flawless hair was partially destroyed by that attack. In addition, he had no choice but to get as far away as he could instead of counterattacking. "You dodged beautifully. However, that way you won't be able to hurt me," said Broly as he walked slowly in the air towards Whis. "I've been fighting this way for so long it's hard to get used to. But I promise I'll try not to hold back," replied Whis, who also slowly in the air towards Broly while teleporting the staff caught in Broly's arm to his hand. In a few seconds, both were face to face again, not literally. Broly is much taller, reading the intentions of his opponent to anticipate his movements even before they were made. Until clash. FIU. Boom. Slash. FIU. Crash. Kaboom. Braum. Both started attacking each other at frenzied speed. Attacking each with their arms, legs, heads, teeth, rods, tails, in seemingly the simplest way possible, without performing flamboyant abilities, without energy attacks, without very elaborate strategies. Hit. Grab. Dodge. Parry. Block. This was all that could be seen. Simply martial arts that, although they seemed simple, were closer to being a true work of art. It was so incredible that even the gods and mortals fighting below couldn't help but stare in awe at the incomprehensible battle that was raging between Whis and Broly despite having their own problems. And of course those who weren't fighting and who could better understand that battle spoke to each other. "This Broly. He not only has the ability to ignore Zeno-sama's powers," said Mahito, who still couldn't believe that someone was capable of fighting one of them on equal terms. Obtaining an ability to disable Zeno-sama was an impossible thing, but they didn't believe that it was also possible to obtain the martial ability of the most powerful beings in this reality. "If we only talk about raw power, he is even stronger than us," said Sour, terrified by the physical ability of the giant and intimidating Saiyan. He had grown up knowing that having bigger muscles didn't mean having more strength and being a better fighter. However, watching Broly fight, he was beginning to change his mind. "We thought Whis was exaggerating, but he was right. Although Broly doesn't master Magat no Goki, he uses various abilities to achieve a similar result," said Campari, analyzing in more depth the reason why Broly, without being using any of the doctrines of this reality, was able to fight face to face against a Tenshin, someone who was born with one of them active all the time. "Seeing the future, reading minds, some kind of omniscience, maybe all at once. With this, he's able to fight even against Whis at a similar level," said Kusu, that although she looked like a loli was actually the oldest of the brothers and sisters. Thanks to that experience, she was able to guess some of the abilities with which Broly was predicting the offensive and defensive actions of his brother before they occurred, thus achieving an effect similar to that obtained with the Magat no Goki. "Although we still don't know if he's showing all his power now. Don't underestimate him at any moment," said Vado, the other Tenshin aside from Wish who knew Broly better. She felt compelled to remind her siblings that they were facing a monster beyond logic that surely had them and his martial power in mind in his plan to conquer this reality. "Don't worry, sister. Whis still hasn't used all his ability yet," said Cognac, that he was confident that his brother could sort out his unfinished business with the monster that emerged from the universe he oversaw. He had never seen one of his race lose to someone of a different race, and neither believed nor wanted that to change today. "And even if he can beat Whis, if we fight together, we can defeat him without problem," said Margarita, who couldn't believe that Broly could beat 7 or 8 angels working together, considering what they were seeing right now. Although they were concerned about Broly's impressive power and intelligence and the danger his brother faced, the Tenshin's brothers believed they had this situation under control, just as their father said. However, that started to change when slash, clack. For the first time since the fight between Broly and Whis began, someone was finally injured. It was only a superficial wound produced by not having completely dodged a punch. A small wound that barely bled on Whis' cheek. "Wahaha!" shouted Broly like a maniac upon seeing his first successful hit. The first success of many. Slash, clack, 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 slash, clack. Broly's power grew and grew as the combat lengthened. Every second that passed, Broly became faster and stronger, and Whis had a harder time evading his attacks. And although for now he was still able to avoid being collided directly by his deadly attacks, from time to time he was unable to completely dodge them. Little by little, his hair, clothes, and even skin began to receive small cuts produced by the tiny frictions and atmospheric pressure that produced by Broly's brutal attacks. Slash, clack, 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 slash, clack. And it didn't take long until Whis, despite not having received any direct attack. Pluck, 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 pluck. He was covered in his own blood from head to toe. His condition was pitiful, while Broly still hadn't been injured in the slightest. Broly kept attacking, increasing his speed, power, and size of his mane every second, while Whis used his full potential beyond 100%, barely dodged the most deadly attacks, adding wound after wound to his already battered body. He wasn't even finding opportunities to counter him anymore. He could only try to survive a little longer. Shit. We have to help him, shouted Sour, who couldn't continue watching this public execution. If any of those punches, kicks, or tail blows managed to hit his brother, his death was almost certain, and Broly got faster and stronger with every second. It was only a matter of time before Whis was beaten, and Broly became so powerful that even they together couldn't defeat him. They had to act as soon as possible. Stop here, Sour, shouted Kusu, stopping his brother, grabbing him by the shoulder. A decision that Sour didn't understand, so he shouted, "What are you doing, Nasan?" Whis is still fighting, shouted Kusu while grabbing her brother's head to make him look at what she wanted. Those are the eyes of someone who knows he has lost. Do you think those are the eyes of someone who only struggles to survive, knowing that they will die in a few seconds? Wish still haven't lost, have faith in your brother. With these words, Sour and his other brothers and sisters who were about to follow him to help Wise stopped in their tracks, and following Kusu's instructions waited to see what Wise had up his sleeve. Slash, clack, 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 slash, clack. One after another, Whis dodged Broly's attacks by adding more superficial wounds to his body, which grew wider, deeper, and in number with every second. Slash, clack, slash, clack, slash, clack. Until, after seeing a small opening, Wish attacked Broly punch at the exact moment that he was going to attack him. With that clash, puff. Broly finally directly hit a part of Whis, his left arm, which was ripped from his body, with a single blow. Whis shouted Sour upon seeing that his brother was in serious trouble, escaping from his sister's grasp. However, seeing that the light in the eyes of Whis hadn't subsided, he stopped in his tracks. Was the fight not over yet? You have disappointed me, Whis, said Broly, feeling some pity for Whis in his condition. He expected more from this fight. He hadn't even managed to hurt him. However, Broly understood, expectations were always difficult to meet. However, that moment of disappointment started Whis' masterpiece. Now rewind. Thanks to Broly giving Whis a break, he accumulated almost all of his energy in his staff and at the same time used his innate ability to revolve things for up to 2 minutes. With that, the memory and position of Broly rebounded at the exact moment in which he tore off his arm a few seconds ago. However, he didn't restart himself. He was right in the same position he was now. The perfect position to touch Broly's materialized fist with his staff, which contained all of his energy. As if time had stopped, Whis changed his position and with his staff touched Broly's fist, the one that should have shattered his arm just right now. Maso no Tenchi. With that, Whis performed one of the most powerful difficult-to-use techniques that an angel was able to perform, an ability that uses almost the divine tension energy to create a chain reaction to transform each atoms or what's touched into divine energy, thus killing any enemy by transmuting it into his own energy. Glang 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 glang. A non-destructive energy that dispersed in the environment, energizing Whis and the other tensions. See? Whis had it all planned, said Kusu, relieved to see that everything had ended well for Whis. Whis, are you okay? Said Vados, who quickly came to where Whis was to heal his wounds and regain his energy with his angelic abilities. Yes, big sister. Thank you, answered Whis, glad to see his arm in his right place, but also sad. After all, he had ended the life of someone quite important to him, someone who, despite everything he had done and intended to do, with good or bad intentions, had been generous to him and Beerus, broadening their culinary horizons as they had never dreamed of before. He would miss him so much. Congratulations, Whis. You finally managed to hit me. I had promised myself not to use this until you did it, said Broly, who also joined that fraternal celebration as if he were part of the family. Aha! Whis and Vados yelled in surprise and even panic as they leapt as far away from the origin of that familiar voice as possible. That's right, Broly was alive and without any kind of injury. Any other living being would have perished in this attack, but not Broly. It wasn't the first time that someone used a similar attack against him. That's why he had all kinds of countermeasures prepared if that happened. No way! Shouted all the tensions upon see that Broly was still alive and well without any kind of sequel. However, what impressed them the most was his appearance. His height and titanic muscles had been shrunken, as if he were in his normal true Saiyan form, his almost infinite mane that he needed to teleport in the formless realm to not be a nuisance when fighting also shrunken, going back to the standard size of true Saiyan. However, both his mane and his fur were different. They weren't black and brown like in his true Saiyan transformation, nor yellow as in his true Legendary Super Saiyan transformation, no green as in his true Legendary Super Saiyan full power transformation, neither bluish green as in his true Legendary Super Saiyan God full power beyond transformation. Now he was pure white. You were also hiding this from me, Broly? Said Whis, who despite having recovered from all his injuries and energies felt more defeated than ever. Broly had been playing with him from the beginning, he never fought seriously against him. That appearance and type of energy that Broly was displaying to everyone was too familiar not to recognize it. Broly was also a Migat no Goki user. I wanted to give you another surprise. Although it was quite obvious that I had learned it. I'm a fucking genius, so I learned something extremely fast just by looking at it. I have touched you on multiple occasions with my tail, with which I have been able to copy your properties and study them perfectly. And of course, I have had multiple opportunities to extract your DNA to study it. It's easy to obtain it with the hair that I once plucked from you while we were training or from the saliva left in the cutlery you used at my parties. You have always been eating in the palm of my hand, literally and figuratively, even if you thought you were watching me, Broly said, feeling extremely evil as he explained that even those moments were part of his plan to obtain this interesting award. And was trying to recover from the surprise and trying not to let Broly's sociopathy affect him, took all his courage and said, "Congratulations, you have mastered the Migate no Goki, a technique that all angels master and always use." Nevertheless. Boom. However, he didn't have time to finish his speech. The last thing his brothers could see was Whis knocked out against the ring floor. They didn't even see how he was attacked. Whis. How is it possible? He has sent Whis flying with a single attack. His brothers and sisters screamed upon see that one of them had been completely defeated and teleported to the stands, where even there he was still unconscious and wounded. But at least he was alive and out of danger now, being healed by Rin, who preferred not to fight in this tournament. Why are you surprised? Not sure how your own ability works? Said Broly, taunting the 7 remaining angels while warming up. And obviously, having no other alternative, they accepted that invitation. Brothers, sisters. Let's attack at once. Shouted Kusu, leading the coordinated attack against Broly. Slash. FIU. Clash. FIU. Slash. FIU. Clash. FIU. Slash. FIU. Clash. FIU. Slash. FIU. However, between the Migat no Goki and his other abilities to see the future, read minds, know everything he wanted, sense the danger, change the shape of his body, teleport parts of his body in the formless realm, his absurd speed and many other of his obscure skills. Their coordinated attack was being totally useless. I can't believe this. Shouted Margarita, because no matter what she was doing, she was unable to touch Broly. It was like fighting a mirages. Don't waste your energy talking. Keep attacking. Said Cognac in a somewhat paradoxical way as he increased the rate at which he attacked Broly. However, didn't matter how many times they attacked him, how they attacked him or how they coordinated to hit him, they were unable to touch even one of their white hairs. And despite all this, Broly was extremely relaxed while dodging that perfect storm of attacks that were unable to touch him, so much so that he even had time and concentration to talk. This ability not only allows me to fight automatically using the best movements I can perform and always taking the best possible strategies that my brain is capable of thinking about. Also, catch. Catch. Broly at incomprehensible speed, while still dodging all the other attacks, grabbed the heads of Cognac and Campari. Crash. Crash. Crack. Crack. Smashed them into each other as if they were nuts, almost destroying them. Huo. Huo. Boom. Boom boom. And threw them against the ring floor just like Whis, from where they also were teleported to the stands, receiving immediate medical attention. A surprising, brutal and humiliating attack that stopped the coordinated action of the 5 remaining brothers in their tracks for a second, and once again charged with more fury. Fucking monster. Shouted Mojito and Sour with a hatred they have never experienced before. His only goal in life now was to destroy Broly's head in the same way that he had destroyed his brothers. Also makes your body bring out all its hidden power in a perfectly balanced way. Exactly what this body needs the most, Broly said as he paused momentarily to let Mojito and Sour's vindictive kick and punch could hit him without any impediment. Boom. Boom. However, right now, Broly's power was infinitely stronger compared to them. Crack. Crack. Therefore, when they hit Broly's head, knowing that whenever 2 objects interact, they exert equal and opposite forces on each other, the limbs of both angels broke into pieces. Boom. Boom. They didn't even have time to feel pain or realize that Broly was saving them by dodging their attacks before being slammed into the ring with the same energy they produced by colliding with Broly. No way. Babbled Vados, Margarita and Kusu, who stopped fighting while looking at their defeated brothers in the stands. They could believe it, they had all lost by receiving a single attack, and worse, by attacking themselves. Understanding that, they felt great despair as they wondered over and over again, barely able to move. Is Broly invincible? Although my power is technically infinite, I have never been able to reach that number through my Saiyan transformations. In my true Legendary Super Saiyan God full power beyond, I simply kept increasing my power and main size infinitely but without reaching the infinite. But with the Migat no Goki, it's another story. My power, energy, speed, endurance, everything is 100% infinite. Even if I don't have super muscles now. Said Broly while looking at the 3 remaining sisters, and wing. 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 He winked at them with his 3 eyes. Crash. 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 It was a simple wink enhanced by his physical ability, nothing more, and only that was necessary to create a shockwave so powerful that he knocked it out and sent it flying 3 angels at the same time towards the void. Aowa. 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 This fantastic ability perfects my infinite abilities and capacities and allow me to use them perfectly. We may use the same technique to fight perfectly. However, your perfection and mine are infinitely distant. It's not that you're weak. I am simply too strong, Broly said to the 8 angels and to all the other secondary actors participating in this tournament while teleporting them all forcibly to the stands. The evidence were clear, they were on completely different levels, even if they all fought against him at the same time, the result would be the same. Broly would win. I can't believe it. He has defeated all the angels in no time, said Beerus, taking care of Whis for first time in his life. He couldn't believe that the difference in power between them was so exaggerated. I knew he's monstrously strong, but this... I never had a chance, said Vegeta, who finally gave up on pursuing Broly as the target of his revenge. Quite the opposite of Goku, who only felt more motivated. This is unbelievable. I want to fight Broly as soon as possible. And now that the stadium had been emptied and the 8 universes who attended the tournament were in the stands watching the show, Broly turned his head to start the final act, and now... only your remains, Daishinkan. Once I defeat you, the strongest fighter in this reality, I will have nothing left to do here. Nothing except to unify all this reality and make it part of me. There was no need to ask any more questions or deliberations. Broly's objective was quite clear and he had the means to achieve it. His power, skill, and intelligence were a threat even to the same Daishinkan. Take Zeno-sama to a safe place until this is over. Until now they had stayed there for several reasons. 1. In part out of pride, since fleeing from the enemy in this situation would be practically equal to a defeat. 2. Because until a few seconds ago was still unclear if Broly had overestimated himself after obtaining the ability to be immune to Zeno-sama, and didn't take into account that he would need more than that to supplant the current hegemonic power of this reality. 3. In view of the situation, the safest place for Zeno was next to Daishinkan, since Broly is able to be in more than one place at the same time, so he could be waiting to ambush them when fleeing. 4. They couldn't lose sight of the other Zeno-sama, controlled by Broly, who for now only watched the combats. However, the situation had now changed. Daishinkan didn't think he would be able to protect Zeno-sama while fighting Broly. That's without thinking twice why Zeno's guards grabbed Zeno-sama and... "No, you can't," shouted future Zeno, raising his hand to vanish their nannies before his other self left the tournament, both organized. "Ouch!" shouted Zeno, who fell headlong onto the platform after his babysitters carrying him disappeared. "Damn!" shouted Daishinkan, losing control of his temper momentarily upon that happened what he had feared most, that future Zeno could eliminate people following Broly's orders. However, this wasn't Broly's plan, since it wasn't necessary, they could never have escaped from here. I'll have to resurrect them later. It wasn't necessary to do that, Zeno-chan. After all, no one can leave or interfere in this place. How many universes that haven't attended the tournament have made it here so far, despite all the times you've called them Daishinkan? None. This place had been sealed by Broly since the first moment in which all the participating universes arrived, and now it would be even more. Reality invasion. What have you done? Asked Daishinkan, who felt something extremely strange and unpleasant around him. It's like everything is the same as before, but at the same time everything has changed. You feel it, right? Everything has started to change. Answered Broly as he walked slowly in the air towards Daishinkan, with the feeling that everything was under his control right now. And Daishinkan, as he watched as Broly slowly approached him, examined with all his divine senses the suspicious and uncomfortable changes he and everything was undergoing. I feel as if everything I know has been mixed with something totally alien. Everything became weird. What you are experiencing is an offshoot of my supreme Kaien ability. With this ability, I am able to superimpose my reality with any other reality in which I come into contact. It doesn't prevent you from using the skills that you are capable of using in your reality either due to your ability or authority, at least not entirely. However, it allows me to use almost perfectly everything that I can do in my reality. And in my reality, I am the absolute sovereign. Broly said as he continued advancing towards Daishinkan with tranquility, the tranquility before the greatest of storms. As Broly advanced towards his last great fight in this reality, he activated his Kaien abilities to his greatest level. Spatial invasion, an area around Broly that can be activated with the true Science transformation with the ability to interfere with the laws of space by bringing these laws from Broly's reality, and increasing the gravity of things weaker or equal than Broly in function with the difference of power. Time invasion, an area around Broly that can be activated with the Super Saiyan's transformation with the ability to interfere with the laws of time by bringing these laws from Broly's reality, and slowing the time of things weaker or equal than Broly in function with the difference of power. Causal invasion, an area around Broly that can be activated with the God Saiyan's transformation with the ability to interfere with the laws of causality by bringing these laws from Broly's reality, and decreasing the effect of every cause of things weaker or equal than Broly in function with the difference of power. And finally, reality invasion, an area around Broly that can be activated with the Migat no Goki transformation with the ability to interfere with the laws of reality by bringing these laws from Broly's reality, and imposing the laws of Broly's reality of things weaker or equal than Broly in function with the difference of power. The laws of space, of time, of causality, the same reality, have been modified? No, he has imposed some new laws, thought Daishinkan, one of the primordial beings of this reality who used its laws directly, as he watched as Broly approached him. Among all those who were in that dimension right now, only him and Zeno-sama, totally traumatized and crying behind his chair, were able to feel that change, and only he was able to begin to understand its consequences. And he understood that Broly was even more dangerous than he had ever imagined. That abominable monster that he had almost before whom he seemed to have been born with the sole purpose of taking over this reality, hadn't left any loose ends. And that monster, after walking triumphantly from top to bottom, finally came within inches of Daishinkan, whom was still looking down on. Do you want to say something to your future boss before your job interview starts? There's a point in prolonging this situation? Daishinkan said as he floated vertically up to talk to Broly face to face, preventing the invader with superiority complex from looking down on him, literally and figuratively. Daishinkan, unlike his sons, has infinite physical stats just like Broly, therefore they were both on equal terms, at least only considering that. If anyone had the audacity to catch up with Broly Migat no Goki in fighting capacity, he was only one. And Broly, as he rubbed his long imaginary beard, after thinking about it for a moment replied, maybe not, but... What about? 3, 2, 1. Go. Boom. Boom. Crash. Crash. Brujot feod feafod fod fact debite kai 8 buri kofdian fanma jane fos down fishin fio. The combat began with. What the hell was that? Asked everyone. Nobody understood anything. Neither of them moved, and yet there was an explosion that practically destroyed the same space and time. This was the result of seeing beings with infinite and incommensurable speed move at their maximum speed. The cause and effect perceived by the observers with ordinary abilities becomes chaotic. It was as if both fighters were fighting in stopped time, in the past and in the future at the same time. Sometimes they perceived the effects of the battle that came from the past but that happened in the future. Sometimes they perceived the causes but not their inexistent effects. Sometimes they perceived millions of effects at the same time without any cause. Sometimes they were unable to perceive anything and everything at the same time. This battle is beyond. Brujot feod feafod fod fact debite kai 8 buri kofdian fanma jane fos down fishin fio. Boom. Brujot feod feafod fod fact debite kai 8 buri kofdian fanma jane fos down fishin fio. This is the result that occurs when two beings of infinite and power clash each other. Every punch, every kick, every headbutt, every tail hit, every bite, destroyed, created and transformed the fabric of spacetime and the same reality in ways no mortal mind could even imagine. The only reason the viewers hadn't died yet due to the collateral damage from their confrontation, the only reason why all the dimensions of this reality hadn't been swallowed up by a giant black hole created by the clash of their unstoppable and immovable powers, was because Broly and Daishinkan were mitigating the damage they caused and could cause around them at the same time that they fought, transcending the same logic. This battle is beyond our understanding. They hit each other before attacked, they moved before accelerated, they healed before were wounded. A battle incomprehensible to the minds of mortals and beholding deities. It was as if they were ants trying to understand a space war. No matter how much they saw, no matter how much they heard, no matter how much they suffered the collateral effects of that war. Even if someone explained to them every strategy, technology, and meaning behind every action, they were unable to understand anything at all, something totally alien to them, like imagining a 69-dimensional reality for 3-dimensional beings like them. Brujot feod feafod fod fact debite kai 8 buri kofdian fanma jane fos down fishin fio. However, that was only the tip of the iceberg. They, although incomprehensibly, could only perceive certain physical causes and effects produced by Broly and Daishinkan, but weren't able to perceive the almost infinite metaphysical skills the two almighty gods were using. In an immeasurable fraction of time, Broly and Daishinkan, before they could physically hit each other, performed abilities that cancelled the actions of another, abilities that cancelled those abilities that transcended the defense of the other, abilities that disabled all attacks, abilities that changed the perception of the other, abilities that changed in the mood of the other, abilities that automatically countered other abilities. All this happening without pause in such a minor interval that it even seemed not to exist, where Daishinkan and Broly planned their movements in advance based on the predictions they made of the opponent, as if it were a complex chess game instead of a combat. There was simply no way of understanding or words to express everything that was happening. This battle is beyond our understanding. Our father never showed us what he was capable of, just like Broly, they've only played with us until now. As living beings they are in another dimension compared to us, said Kusu to all her brothers and sisters as she tried by all means to understand, even if it's just an infinitesimal fraction of what was happening around her. And while mortals, gods, angels, Broly's team and even the two Zenos tried to understand the combat that had started a few seconds ago. In the same place, but as if it were a separate dimension, Broly and Daishinkan kept fighting. An extremely even combat that, although it started a few seconds ago, for the others, for Broly and Daishinkan, whose speed surpassed every obstacle, it was like it lasted an eternity. This is the first time that I can fight with all my power against someone, something that I never thought possible even with any of my children, said Daishinkan, praising Broly, his only rival until now, while he kept fighting. And Broly, who's a gentleman above all else, answered like a gallant, I have the same opinion. I have never been able to fight at this level against anyone except you. Although, unlike you, I do hope that my children can reach this level at least. When you have more children, like me, you will realize that this scenario is extremely complicated, even with your direct help, said Daishinkan, boasting of having more children than Broly, something in which he undoubtedly beat him and with which he would surely anger the narcissist of his enemy. Something that angered Broly a little, but not too much. After all, he had time, energy, and motivation more than enough to surpass Daishinkan in this matter. That's why he said, yes, whatever. Don't try to compare your past failures with my future successes. Both kept fighting, on a physical, metaphysical, and mental level for a short and at the same time infinite interval of time, so long that even Broly and Daishinkan had time to talk about life and even become friends while hitting each other indefinitely. Broth trying to beat an opponent with an extremely similar level while playing by the same rules, until both determined that they already knew all the strengths and weaknesses of the other after that long fight. I had a great time, but if we continue like this, we will never end. Since we started, we've barely been able to hurt each other, said Daishinkan, who, despite having fun like never before with this match with his new friend, it began to get too repetitive and long. What do you want me to say? It's difficult that beings of our level can be defeated by such a primitive kind of combat, but that's what makes it exciting. At the end of the day, in this reality, it's the usual way to fight, and in which you specialize. I would like to beat you this way, said Broly, openly stating that his intention was to beat Daishinkan on his own ground, so that there would be doubts about who's the best at absolutely everything. Intentions that Daishinkan understood pretty well. He was proud to know that Broly recognized his power, especially since he was unable to defeat him. Although he couldn't defeat Broly in the same way, certainly this would be the most appropriate way, but I have another specialty apart from hand-to-hand fighting. Oh, is cooking? Asked Broly partly sarcastically. Although he really would like it to be so, he would like to have an assistant at his level. However, obviously Daishinkan wasn't talking about cooking, but about another discipline parallel to his favorite martial arts. Magic. Fractal sealing, Daishinkan said while making a strange hand gesture. And suddenly, after doing that, Broly's body began to light up, with strange marks that looked like runes. Even Broly showed surprise at being the target of this strange ability. What the hell? However, no one had time to enjoy Broly's surprising expedition, because suddenly, clank. FIU. Broly disappeared as if he had been swallowed by a drain, but in this case, the drain was himself. And after 5 seconds of great tension and perplexity, Broly still didn't return. Had he been defeated? How? What's that? WH? But before his children bombarded him with questions, Daishinkan answered, this is the most powerful sealing ability in existence. Fractal sealing. An ability that marks an enemy's body and seals it on itself, making it to disappear from existence. Or at least technically. Broly now has become a fractal of his own concept, being sealed over his very essence in an infinity of layers of himself, without any concept of time or space, only himself and his great ego. And in the unlikely event that he manages to break a seal and escape from one of those fractal layers, he will need to do the same with a fractal infinite numbers of seals, making it impossible for him to escape from himself. A fitting fate for someone so narcissistic. I haven't understood anything. Can someone explain it to me? Said Goku, this time representing everyone who doesn't know what the hell a fractal is. However, apart from that, there were also productive questions and comments, such as Whis' one moment father. Broly has countless other bodies, sealing just one of them isn't enough. We have to. Don't panic, Whis, the fractal sealing is considered the most powerful sealing ability not only for its power, but also for its range. The runes that I inscribed on Broly as we struggled to create the seal weren't only etched on his body, also in his soul and concept itself. If all Broly bodies share only one of these characteristics, they must have been affected as well. All the Brolys of this timeline, and of all the other timelines, since as he said in his case, they are a single entity, have been defeated by an unknowability for him. After all, is the first time I use it with someone. Said Daishinkan, satisfied after having done his job perfectly. He had managed to eliminate the greatest threat to his reality, since reality itself had existed in a single movement. Now he just had to worry about Broly's soldiers, that although some could pose a threat to the Hakaitians, and even his children, they didn't pose a threat to him, eliminate future Zeno brainwashing, and investigate about the other realities that Broly had mentioned. This had been the first attack from an alien reality, however, nothing guaranteed that it would be the last time. After all, for now they know nothing about other realities, not even where to start investigating, much less how to create countermeasures to prevent others. However, one thing was clear, they would have to totally change their priorities. And while Daishinkan began to make plans about how to organize and strengthen this reality to prevent, detect and counteract other cases like Broly, Zeno-sama, who until now was hiding behind his throne, finally poked his huge melon head and asked with fear as he looked from side to side looking for the bogeyman with 3 eyes, has Broly gone? Will he no longer come back? That's right, Zeno-sama, you don't have to be afraid. Broly is gone forever, Daishinkan said to reassure Zeno-sama and all other deities and mortals. However, those of Universe 7 weren't calm at all. Not for having lost one of its inhabitants, friends, family, chef, inventor, advisor, investor, teacher, pornography dealer, YouTuber, comedian, student, enemy. Not for having to explain to Bulma what had happened or for the possible retaliation against them for having raising the worst criminal in the history of all this reality. But because they didn't believe this was the end. This has been too easy. I refuse to believe that Broly lost in this way, all the members of Universe 7 thought, regardless of whether they were deities or mortals, sympathizing or detractor of Broly. They had lived with Broly long enough to know that his twisted mind would have devised a plan in the event that he fell victim to such an ability. Besides, the face of future Zeno and the other members of Broly's army didn't show any concern. And the mark on their forehead with the shape of a third eye was still there. For all these reasons they couldn't help but think while looking from side to side, something isn't right. And they were right. What's up, Doc? Said Broly, who appeared behind Zeno-sama, stroking his melon head with his feet. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/Kaioshin. I tend to polls that decide important plot stuff in my P at Trian. Many thanks to my awesome patrons. Ben Phillips, Yami Tancho, Harold's Martinsons, Kenny Nielsen. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. I'll be here until next time.